You know that feeling when you open up a bank's quarterly earnings report and it's just this impenetrable wall of numbers? Yeah, it can feel like a total black box. You've got massive figures, complex jargon, shifting percentages, and you're probably just wondering, how does anyone actually spot the risk hiding inside this colossal loan book? Well, here is the secret. If you know exactly where to look, there's this one specific, vital metric that cuts right through all that noise and literally gives the entire game away. So in today's explainer, we're going to master that exact metric. We'll decode how financial experts truly measure the hidden risks in banking, and honestly, it's going to completely change how you read financial health.
So we gotta start with a vital mystery, one that every investor really needs to solve. How can you tell if a bank is secretly heading for trouble long before the headlines actually hit? Because think about it, the average person usually just waits for the bank's CEO to step up to a podium and announce these massive, unexpected losses. But by then, oh, it is way too late. The storm has already flooded the house and your portfolio is underwater. Top-tier financial analysts, though, they don't wait for that podium. They have a way of scanning the horizon, analyzing the raw data, and spotting those dark clouds gathering way before the very first drop of rain even falls.
To figure out exactly how they do that, we're going to use a brilliant mental model from our sources. We are going to picture a giant, multi-billion-dollar institutional bank as, wait for it, a 5-year-old's lemonade stand. Now, okay, I know that sounds almost too simple, but it perfectly illustrates the core mechanics of banking without getting bogged down in all the complicated financial plumbing. Because at its absolute foundation, a massive bank is really just a highly regulated kid handing out cups of lemonade on credit, right? Their entire inventory is just trust. They hand out the product today, and they hope the neighborhood kids pay them back tomorrow with a few extra coins in interest. The underlying mechanics are literally exactly the same.
Okay, so to understand the risk here, we need to track the chronological journey of a single loan as it slowly goes bad. Because a loan doesn't just go from perfectly healthy on Monday to completely dead on Tuesday. It's not a sudden cliff, it's a measurable sequence. First, you've got the good kid, who always pays on time. In banking, that's your performing loan. But then, the decay begins. They're one day late. Next, they actively start slipping away into the bad pile. And finally, you hit the grim reality of 3 whole months going unpaid. That sequence right there, that is the complete life cycle of a financial failure. And you know, it always starts with a wobble. That kid who bought your lemonade on credit is suddenly a few days late paying you back. Before a borrower completely pulls a vanishing act, you notice they're one day late. Then it turns into a few days. They haven't officially run off just yet, but as the stand owner, your tummy gets that familiar bad feeling. You start wondering, hey, where are they? It's just basic, relatable human nature. But actually, scratch that. It's the exact same psychological shift we see in massive corporate lending. When a multi-million-dollar borrower starts ducking calls and missing deadlines, believe me, a bank's chief risk officers start sweating with that exact same feeling in the pit of their stomachs. Now, what's really fascinating here is the official banking term for that initial wobble. They call it an SMA, or special mention account. This is essentially the ultimate leading indicator of storm clouds gathering. An SMA is a loan showing early, definitive signs of stress. So the money is overdue, yes, but it hasn't been overdue quite long enough to be officially stamped as a toxic, dead loan. It's basically the bank's internal, highly sensitive watch list. This is the secret metric analysts look for. If you see a bank's pool of SMAs growing rapidly, you aren't just seeing a bad quarter. You are literally hearing the undeniable rumble of thunder before the rain.
But then we hit the critical breaking point. This is the exact moment a previously good kid completely stops paying and officially moves into the bad pile. Let's say you have a borrower who always paid on time, but suddenly, nothing. Crickets. She just slipped from the dependable, performing pile straight over to the Bunty pile. Bunty being, that notorious neighborhood rascal who takes your lemonade and completely vanishes into thin air. This is the precise moment the initial wobble turns into an actual, painful fall. The trust is gone and the asset is officially souring.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway from all this is mastering a concept called slippage. Slippage is the exact rate at which those performing, healthy loans are actively turning bad right now. It is so vital to understand that slippage isn't just some static noun, it's an action. It is totally forward-looking. When elite analysts talk about slippage, they're measuring the active velocity of failure within the bank's loan book during a specific quarter. It's the real-time bleeding of the portfolio, if you will. It tells you exactly how many good cups of lemonade went sour this week and how fast the bank's foundation is currently crocking.
And understanding that velocity, that brilliantly illustrates why slippage is just so vital, especially when you contrast it with another super famous banking term you've probably heard, gross NPA. Gross non-performing assets is essentially the graveyard. It looks backward. It just tells you about loans that are already dead and buried. But slippage? Slippage is the trajectory of decay. Think of it like this. If GNPA is the size of the messy puddle on your floor, slippage is the rate at which the pipe is currently leaking. One tells you about the mess that's already happened, while the other predicts exactly how big that puddle is going to be tomorrow. This is why analysts know that relying solely on a clean, low GNPA is a massive trap. A bank's PR team, they will always shout from the rooftops if their headline GNPA number looks clean today, because hey, it makes them look incredibly responsible. But if you dig into the raw filings and see that their slippage is quietly accelerating in the background, man, that is a massive flashing sell signal. Future trouble is already baked in, regardless of what the PR spin says. So here's your golden rule for the day. You always read slippage alongside GNPA, never instead of it. Let's follow that slipped loan to its grim, ultimate conclusion. After 90 days of waiting, you just have to admit the money simply isn't coming back. You handed out the lemonade, the kid disappeared. Maybe they moved away, maybe they're just hiding behind the bushes down the street. But after 3 long months of waiting, harsh reality sets in. The hope of ever getting those coins back is totally gone. The wobble became a slip, and the slip has now hit absolute rock bottom. At this point, the loan is officially classified as an NPA, a non-performing asset. This is the precise 90-day legal death knell set by regulators. Once a loan hits this dreaded NPA status, it becomes this massive weight dragging down the bank. The bank completely stops earning any money on it, and worse, the regulators force them to stop pretending. They actually have to start reaching into their own pockets, using their own capital to cushion the blow of that lost lemonade. The loss becomes very, very painfully real.
So if you're actually sitting there reading an earnings report, this is your absolute gold standard. A healthy, disciplined bank aims to keep its slippage ratio firmly under 1%. That's it. That is the industry magic number. If slippage is under 1%, the bank is maintaining tight control, keeping the bad apples out of the cart. But if you see that number starting to creep up to 2% or 3%, you are watching the pipeline of bad loans expand in real time. Above 1%, the pressure on the bank's profitability starts compounding rapidly, making it incredibly difficult to out-earn the mistakes they've already made.
All right, to summarize this entire mechanical process, I want you to lock this investor mantra into your mind. You spot the wobble, you measure the slip, and you check the reality. Your early warning system, that's the SMA. Your real-time trajectory of failure, that's your slippage. And your final historical reality check is the GNPA. If you master this progression and always remember to read the current rate of decay against the historical bad debt, well, you're pretty much never going to be blindsided by a bank's sudden collapse ever again.
Which leaves us with one incredibly critical thought to end on today. When a bank's slippage inevitably spikes, do they actually have enough capital and PCR saved up to keep the lemonade stand open? PCR stands for Provision Coverage Ratio, by the way, which is really just the money legally set aside specifically to cover these bad loans. Because let's face it, spotting the storm on the horizon is really only half the battle. If a bunch of borrowers run off without paying, the ultimate question becomes, was the bank clever enough to fill their emergency coin jar to survive the hit? But evaluating the depth of that coin jar, well, that's a whole other fascinating puzzle for you to explore next.